Okay, I want to welcome everybody to the Town Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for May 13th, 2020. And the first thing was up is the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have approval of the agenda next. I believe everything's all right. Is that correct, Craig?
Yes, the agenda is fine.
Okay, thank you. And the next item on the agenda is a public participation. If there's anybody from the public that's happens to be on Zoom. So,
We do have two individuals who have raised their hand.
Okay.
With your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'll unmute the first person to speak.
absolutely.
You are active now, Ms. Bedraco. Please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, Gail Bedraco, 21 Isabel Terrace. I know tonight you're going to be discussing, which I think is wonderful, the outdoor restaurant seating, but the executive order also mentions allowing retail businesses to get on the fast track permission to sell retail goods on sidewalks or other outdoor areas, including shared spaces or spaces provided by the municipality. So I was wondering if you would consider, or are you looking to accommodate any retailers? Because we have a lot of small businesses in town that might not be able to fully reopen due to space limitations or whatever, or even some of our larger retailers who might want to do this. So I was just wondering whether that would be considered in addition to restaurants, assuming that these retail establishments could do some sales outside as long as they comply with social distancing.
Mhm. Great question, Gail. I appreciate it. We're trying to help all the restaurants the best we can, but we need to send a message to all businesses that if there's something that we can do and they need some outside area or something for the retail space, I agree with you. We can try to accommodate them any way we can. I think the difficult thing is getting the word out to everybody, and we need to work close with our business community in order to keep it thriving. So
Thank you.
I agree with you. Yep. We have somebody else.
We do have the next individual who is looking. Just a moment, I will unmute. You are now live. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, it's Rose Lyons, 46 Elton Drive, and as I was thinking about what I had to say, I think I answered my own question, but maybe I will just say what I had to say. Is it correct in my understanding that blight and the zoning violations are two separate matters? If so, my concerns are on the letters that have been going out to residents regarding blighted properties. So I think that probably would be best addressed with the town manager, and I did address it with the town council last night. So it was a good little lesson for me trying to learn how to get in on the Zoom meetings. Thank you very much. I hope you all are well. Stay safe, and I'll be watching. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rose. We do have, I think, Andrew on if he wants to explain the difference between the two.
I actually know the difference between the two, and when I saw the zoning enforcement officer on the agenda tonight, my question was going to be, and I probably should ask it anyway, I've always had a problem with not being able to speak on agenda items, and I just maybe like some clarification. Do you consider an agenda item his report, the town planner's report, or is it just applications that you refer to?
I have flexibility on that. You can speak about anything you'd like.
Okay, that's it then. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rose. Is there anybody else from the public that'd like to speak?
We have one more individual. They're indicated as CARAS. I am unmuting them. Let's see. There we are. You're now unmuted. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, this is Cara Santoro. My first name is spelled C-A-R-A. The first thing I want to point out is in last meeting in the notes, and I was quoted in when you printed out the agenda as Carla, which that's not my name, but a lot of people make a mistake. But it was also, I was quoted as saying that I think we should look around Newington for some more TOD areas for the low income, moderate income housing. I never said that. I am opposed to putting it at Newington Junction. I brought up all the places where we already have it, the 2 bordering towns, parts of West Hartford that have it. And I finished by saying, let's again ask you to care about the current homeowners and residents of this town and stay the moratorium on affordable housing. So as another neighbor said it so beautifully, give us a reason to want to live in this town. That's exactly what I said. And I'm really upset that I was misquoted as if I was for the agenda that some people are trying to push forward.
And where were you quoted in that?
If you look in like the meeting notes, I looked online to see what the meeting notes were from last time, and
Do you have the date? If you can get the date we can make a correction, I believe, right, Craig?
yeah, I probably can get
Yes.
it to you before this ends, but yes, I could do that. And
Or if you don't get it before this ends, call the town planner and give them the correction and the date of the minutes, and we'll get it on our agenda and we'll correct the record for you.
okay, I appreciate that. And I'm also still concerned about, Newington Junction. It's not like the other 2 areas that you want to create a TOD zone. This is mostly comprised of like single family homes, some that are over 100 years old. The other areas don't abut residential zones like the Myra Cohen Way and the proposed train station. Both of those are basically undeveloped or in a stage, of development. The junction, again, is more residential than industrial. And one of the business, West Hill Automotive, which has been there for years and has a few residential houses. And I remember correctly, DOT wanted to put a railroad stop there, but that was changed due to the fact that they couldn't accommodate the parking area and it was so far away from major expressways. And over the last few months, there's been a big push by several members of elected boards to try to force, to move the train station back to this location when the state already said no. The town's already inundated with huge volumes of traffic on both sides of the town roads. And being here over 30 years, I'm opposed to any major development in this area that would destroy the neighborhood. And a small town like this, as I said before, we don't need another TOD area, plus the ones that we already have in town. So I'm just requesting that the commission leave Newington Junction alone and that any new or amended zone changes be done at a later date when a full public hearing can be held instead of trying to put it on, some tonight. And like Commissioner Woods did with the housing moratorium, since, the plan will be the basics for the next 10 years, I would want a full public hearing instead of put it on something like this. I think, more of the town people need to participate and be there in person.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I have a question. I may have come in late, but I didn't hear the attendance.
You're absolutely correct. We didn't take roll call. Thank you for correcting me. We'll have Craig Minor take the roll call right now.
Okay. Chairman Payne,
Here.
Commissioner Fox,
In the garage.
Here.
Commissioner Sobieski, Commissioner Woods, Commissioner Braverman,
Here,
Commissioner Gill, Commissioner Haggerty,
Here.
Commissioner Claffey,
here,
Commissioner Havens,
Here.
Commissioner Linares.
Okay. I know he's here. I know he was here. Okay, so if there's nobody else from the public and we've done our roll call, thank you for correcting me on that. Our next thing would be a zoning enforcement officer report.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. It's Andrew Armstrong. I'm here by phone, the zoning enforcement officer. Does anyone have any questions on the April 2020 ZEO report?
Hey, Andrew, before we go into the questions, do you want to explain to people your procedures on what you're doing? If any complaints come in, how you're handling them, and then how you're handling blight, and also, I think we talked about certain things that you were going to be working on for possible changes to the regulations to make it a little easier on certain like parking requirements and things like that. If you could hit on that a little bit for the commission, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Blight is actually totally separate from zoning, but I'll say for both types of complaints right now, I'm going out and speaking to people first and trying to have a face-to-face conversation with people, of course, using social distancing and the proper precautions. In addition to that, we are looking into working on some zoning regulation changes, but I believe the commission wanted to do that at a later date.
Mm-hmm.
For the time being, we're kind of on a temporary hold for zoning violations, but we are going out and speaking to people, resolving it that way if possible, and keeping a record of what's coming in. If there's something that is really egregious, then we will discuss it with Chairman Payne and decide if it's something that needs to be addressed, for safety or otherwise.
Okay, very good, Andrew. Thank you very much. Is there any questions from commissioners? Okay, thank you very much, Andrew. If there's no questions, is there any remarks from
thank you, everyone.
commissioners?
You're muted, I think. You're on mute.
I had it off of me.
Any commissioners have any questions or comments? Okay, we don't have a public hearing. We have, the next thing on the agenda would be approval of the minutes. We have TPZ minutes for April 6th and April 22nd, regular meetings. If I could entertain a motion for approval on those.
So moved. Fox.
Moved by Fox. Is there a second?
Second, Garrett Havens.
Seconded by Garrett Havens. Any questions or comments or corrections? Hearing none. All in favor?
Commissioner Sobieski has a question.
Okay. Hi, Commissioner.
Yes, I thought the lady just said there was an issue with one of the minutes from the meetings. We can't approve both of them.
All right.
Remember,
Commissioner Payne, I noticed that she said the meeting notes, not the minutes. So I think there was something in the agenda packet that she read online that mischaracterized something she said at the PAM. I don't think it's the minutes that she was speaking about, but that was just my impression.
Okay. And I think
I thought it was right here, planning and development minutes here.
Okay, and Glenn has a question. Go ahead, Glenn.
Hang on. I think I'm looking back at the minutes from the February public informational meeting. The one on February 26th, and I believe that Ms. Santora is, her name is misspelled there on page 6 of those minutes. So if that helps the commission at all, I think the corrections to her name would be in the February 26th meeting minutes on page 6. Certainly on page 6, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. I think the best thing to do, commissioners, would be we can approve these, and then if the woman contacts the planner, then the planner will get the detailed information on which minutes need to be corrected, and then we can always go back and correct the minutes. So
That's fine with me. Thank you.
Okay. Is there all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, the minutes have been approved. We have, next thing is new business, the Plan of Conservation and Development. I'll turn it over to Glenn.
Well, good evening, commissioners. It's nice to see you after, I don't think any of us thought it would be quite this long before we got back together again. You know, you may recall we had a public informational meeting in the February with regard to the draft of the Plan of Conservation and Development. There were a number of comments received at that meeting and also a few following in terms of correspondence. I put together a chart of public meeting comments. Hopefully you have that at your disposal. I'd like to treat this with your approval as sort of a consent agenda. There are a number of comments that I think are not policy oriented and improve and enhance the plan. And I've identified those as change recommended. And all these comments are numbered. So if anybody doesn't have it, just speak up and we can go through them one by one. There are some other comments that were made that I think are already addressed in the POCD. So in the column on the right there, I've identified those as no change necessary question mark really for the commission. I think perhaps based on our prior discussions, that issue may already have been addressed. And then there's some other issues that I've identified as TPZ discussed. And these are issues that again were brought up at the public meeting that either ask the commission to change the information that's in the POCD or it's a policy decision on the part of the commission. And for me to help you by incorporating your thoughts and wishes into the POCD, I want to get some guidance from the commission on those. So does everybody have this at their disposal? This chart, does it sound familiar?
Yes, we
Yes.
should all have it in our packet.
It looks like,
James, could you display it? The working paper?
That'd be well and good if I got a packet.
Sorry, I had to come back. I lost my signal, so I'm back in now.
Commissioner Fox, no packet for you?
No. Well, I might have got one this evening. My mail doesn't come until about 5 or 6.
All right.
But I'm on.
Sorry.
I'm on the town website, so I'm okay.
all right. I think, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, what I'd like to do is just sort of walk through quickly, chapter by chapter, the various comments that were made and get some guidance from the commission as to how to proceed. Does that sound reasonable?
Yes, it does.
So the first, some general overall comments. People noted that the table of contents doesn't have chapter numbers in there, and we use those through the plan, and they asked that those be added. They also asked that page numbers be put on the map pages so that we can refer to them. We've numbered the pages before and after them, but not the map pages. So with your consent, I would propose to make those changes. And then there were some general comments about people like that the POCD identifies areas where development could or should occur and felt it was a good POCD overall. So those are the general comments. Does that sound good?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. How about the other commissioners?
I have no problem with it, Sobieski.
Fox is okay.
The next
Okay.
3 chapters in the plan, the introduction, conditions and trends, and natural resources, no comments were made with regard to those items. With regard to the open space chapter, a comment was made at the meeting that they like the concept of open space connections and creating a network, and suggested that specific properties be identified and targeted for preservation. I think, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, that is already referenced in action step number 2 on page 28. So I don't think any additional change is necessary there, unless the commission wanted to strengthen that language in some way, shape, or form. So my
Yeah, I think-
comment in the box is no change necessary, question mark.
Yeah, that is referenced in there, the trails you're speaking about, where the trails would go, what properties and everything. So I believe that's all in there.
Yep.
I'm set with that. Any commissioners' questions up to now? Okay, proceed, Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No comments on chapter 5, community character, or chapter 6, sustainability and resiliency. So that completes the first page of the report. Now we're on to page 2. In the first portion at the top is chapter 7 relating to Newington Town Center. And there was some concern expressed that because Cedar Street carries such a high volume of traffic that trying to encourage a village type development might be a bit of a challenge, and wondered how this could be addressed. And the plan recommends a public participatory process, oftentimes called a charrette. And I think that's exactly the type of issue that could and should be discussed as part of that process. So I'm not sure that we need to say any more here. And that's why I identified it as no change necessary. How does the commission feel about that?
Fine with me.
Good.
Yeah, sounds good.
Next is chapter 8. This is the opportunities in areas and sites. There are a number of comments that were brought up, and I've got a number of notations here in the margin for some guidance from the commission as how you would like to proceed. The first comment, which I think the commission heard reiterated this evening in the public comment section, was with regard to the Newington Junction area. There was concern expressed about development, which might affect existing homes, reduce the industrial zoning, reduce tax revenue, bring more traffic, or otherwise change the character of the area. I think that as Newington looks to the future for ways to improve its tax base or address the opportunities presented by transit, Newington Junction is an area which could accommodate some change. I don't think anybody's talking about a dramatic change in the character of the area, but it is an area that the plan identifies as having opportunity. So that's why we chose the phrase opportunity sites. So I look for guidance from the commission as to how you might want to modify or change any of the languages on page 51 of the draft POCD.
Glenn, this is Commissioner Sobieski. My concern down there is it's mostly residential, as the lady said earlier. And to start going in there and to make a lot of changes would really upset the people in there. My concern would be to try to leave that area alone. The other two areas that we have thought about TOD is not like this area. We're not abutting residential. We're not changing the characters of the area. Many people have expressed the fact that if you do too much development down there, you're going to increase traffic on the local roads, which is going to take away the character of the area. That's what the lady was, I think, was referring to in her comment. I understand that, you know, it's a mixed-use development with Day Street being industrial, but even when Day Street was in its heyday, there wasn't as much traffic as there is starting now because people are using it as a cut-through. And they're concerned with the fact of high speeds through there. Police departments had to enforce through there and stuff. So it's something that the residents in that area are very concerned with.
I understand, Stanley, their concern and everything, but I think I think everybody would agree that what we have there now with the landscaper and the car dealer down there is not a pleasant sight. And there must be something that we can do there to be able to clean it up. Maybe it's not development, maybe it's just parking for the buses area there and cleaning it up and landscaping or there's something, but there's got to be something that we can do to make that area nicer for the residents over in that area.
Commissioner Payne, I agree with you. The issue is the freight stations on historical commission records. So I don't know, that would have to be moved, I guess, or something. There's a lot of fiber optics in that area too that run the entire length of the rail line. So whatever development in there, you got to be very careful of the fiber optics that are in there. With regard to the landscaper and the auto dealer, I don't know. That's, you know, I think something needs to be done in that area. That, as far as I'm concerned, is an area that could be looked at, but I don't think they would want to put something with high volume traffic in there. That's my question. That's my concern.
I agree with you. We don't need high volume traffic in there. You're right. It should be more of a community area that's cleaned up and built for the community there and cleaned up. and some sort of separation between Day Street and the residents. Matter of fact, a lot of the buffer area over on the other end of Day Street got destroyed, and I don't know if that's been corrected yet, but we need to protect the buffers between the residents' property and the industrial property.
I went by there and all he's done is mounded dirt and put a few arborvitae in, which I don't, again, I'm assuming that either Andrew or the town planner is keeping an eye on. But yeah, that's part of the issue in that area. People just do what they want. And, anyway, that's the comments that I've heard from the residents in that area.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Fox.
Commissioner Fox here. Well, for one thing, cleanup is not development. And, I know you're talking about, getting the place looking better, the landscaper and the other commercial industrial places over there. They do need some cleaning up. But I have to agree with Commissioner Sobieski and the woman that was speaking in public participation. This is not a place for major development. As I said, I think at the last meeting, there are a lot of older homes there. As a matter of fact, there's one home owned by Matt Nelson, which may not be in that area. It's probably on the borderline, but that's pre-revolution. And to increase traffic and saddle the residents with that kind of problems, I would not agree. Thank you.
Any other
I also
comments from the
agree with
commissioners?
Mr. Sobieski. High Braverman is agreement.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I noticed also that the next comment on this page, comment number 13 on the list, was a comment also brought up at the public hearing. Some of the other areas that we talk about in Newington as opportunity sites, we're recommending a charrette, which is really a community-driven process to evaluate what's possible, what's acceptable, what's desirable. And for whatever reason, I'm not quite sure, that didn't get recommended for the Newington Junction area. So we might have three options on the table, one of which is to leave the POCD the way it is. The second one, several comments seem to recommend that taking Newington Junction out as an opportunity site. And an alternative action, if the commission is interested, would be to recommend a community participatory process to talk about what types of development, how can we clean up the sites the commission has mentioned, and address some of these other issues in a way that the neighborhood supports.
Any other
Glenn,
additional?
Glenn, this is Commissioner Sobieski. If I remember correctly, when I first got on, at that time, the economic director or development person, Mr. Brecker, had tried to develop the entire area with putting in parks and making it look like a blue-back square down in that area. And that set the neighborhood off. And, I understand what you, excuse me, I understand where you're coming from. If that was a full transit node down there with a rail stop, bus stop, that would make sense. But to have just a half a transit node in there with the bus stop right now, with even if you put additional parking, they'd have to have a shuttle bus to bring people up over from Francis Avenue area to the other side, because nobody's going to walk straight up that grade here. It's about a 4% grade. So I don't know the answer. I do know that at that time there, Mr. Brecker had plans and people were all over the place with it. So, you might want to look to see have the neighbors try to meet and have some type of general discussion just in that area. It's only a thought.
Would the commission like to proceed with page 51?
Well, we also have the other two areas there. I mean, we have the Cedar Street one. There was no comments in here about the Cedar Street one. Is everybody comfortable turning that into a mass transit area with a 72-page regulation, TVDD? And are you comfortable destroying all our industrial property and turning it over to transit and housing? I mean, we need to talk about that too, I think.
Commissioner Payne, you're correct. The issue that I have, is we need to be smart about what we're going to look at redeveloping. You know, you're right. We had the Crest Pontiac issue there that got turned into housing, I guess. I'm not 100% sure what's going on there. And then we're going to lose some more industrial area or possible area to get taxes with 333 Berlin Turnpike. We do have most of the buildings on that we have in the industrial areas right now, I believe, are pretty much occupied, maybe a few vacant ones. But I think we have to be smart and look to the future. And I think what the future would be is we're not going to have any big Fafner or Fenn coming in here anymore. But what we can look at doing is getting some small office type condos in there or some type of thing.
Well, the town has always been very successful in industrial parks for smaller businesses. So even though some of the industrial properties are going away, the big 100,000 or 400, 500,000 square foot places, there is a need possibly for smaller companies wanting to have an area to build their own building. I just think maybe that the two areas, the Newington Junction and the Cedar Street train station, I think we need more discussion on it. And I'd hate to have something in the POCD that makes it sound like we've already decided everything. Any comments from the commissioners?
Well, Commissioner Payne, I kind of think that, you know, you're dealing with three different distinct areas. You're dealing with Myra Cohen Way, for instance. That's one area.
Yep.
And the area that's closest to that would be where the train station is going on Cedar Street. Okay. Those are both on fairly wide roads, can handle some capacity more of traffic, not much more, but a little bit more. When you get into Newington Junction, though, what are you going to do with traffic? That's the question. Now, when I grew up over there, when 8-Tracks was there from 5 to 5:15, you couldn't move. After that, it was clear. It's the same thing that I've heard from people with down on Dowd Street. When the factory let out, you couldn't move on Dowd Street for 15 minutes and it was clear. So that's what the concern is. I think that you got to treat all three areas distinctly. You can't have one overlay for all three. That's my point.
I would agree.
Yeah, I agree with you, Stanley. Each one is a little different. They could have things that overlap, but there could be separate things because of the area. For instance, you know, I agree with you that you don't want to drive a lot of traffic to Newington Junction, but it certainly would be nice to clean it up. And the Cedar Street, I don't mind having a train station over there, but I'd like to have a train station with the industrial property. I hate to get rid of the industrial property there. You know, am I in favor of some housing over there? Yeah, I'm in favor of some housing over there. But I don't think that it's a wise decision for us to ruin all our industrial property for a commuter lot and massive housing.
I have a question or a statement, basically. Given the fact that there is this coronavirus situation going on, and we're not really sure about how people are going to be working or even how much traffic will be produced, I think right now we need to take a look at what other companies are doing. Twitter just announced that their corporate headquarters, that all of their workers can work from home. So from a corporate perspective, this may filter out to Connecticut as well, that there may be workers not working from a corporate setting, but in their home. I think we need to evaluate what that's going to be. And I think it's really very serious now.
Yeah,
Commissioner Payne, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Oh, I agree with Commissioner Braverman. I do know that the IRS has been taking, like, I know several people that work there. They've been having people work now from home, and they're going to get rid of some of their commuting issues that they have. So this may very well be, this virus may very well have changed or will change some of the outlook of what we have for property usage. I'm not saying it will. I may go back, but I'll never go back to where it was. As far as what you had said about commercial property in there. I agree with you. I don't want to see all the commercial property go away. I had advocated with Mr. Brecker, when they were talking about the rail station, and I was a big advocate of putting underground parking in there. And I have a reason for that, because then the land above it can be used for additional items. And I think that may be a negotiable point with the DOT when they do build that rail station. I think the underground parking would be a great issue. You know, we would get rid of the unsightly vision of all vehicles parked in there. So, I mean, I think there's some things that we do need to look at that particular area. I'm not, like I says, I know that you should be able to put at least a 2-story garage underground, which would then make it easier for the commuters and not take all of our property above ground. And then if we wanted to put in some type of mixed use development, like for instance, office condos or something along those lines, maybe a restaurant or something that could use the parking at night, that would be shared parking. That would be something to look at, in my opinion.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there any other commissioners that have questions or comments? I see that there's 3 hands up, so. Dave Lenars, do you have a question?
Yeah, one of them was mine. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I kind of agree with a lot of the commissioners and yourself and what they're saying in bits and pieces. But one of the recommendations that was made earlier by putting that charrette process back into that area under comment 12, I think might alleviate some confusion where, as Mr. Chairman said, you don't want to predetermine anything or put anything in that might handcuff you in the future, leaving everything on the table, but would also keeping the public opinion, commissioner's opinion, everything on the table for the future. And I wouldn't want to see a blanket policy for all of the areas, but rather take them individually, but be able to take them individually and not predetermine anything by using that, I guess it would be charrette process going forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there any other commissioners' comments? So Glenn, is there a way that we can, it seems like with that last comment and is there a way to write in the regulation and write into the POCD that we're still exploring how we can best utilize these 3 areas that work within our community and isn't detrimental to one area, but, you know, a general statement or something that the commission is still working on it, but we're in favor of some development, if it's correct?
I do have a couple of thoughts, Mr. Chairman. I think that at the present time on page 51, there is a land use strategy listed. And the first thing it says is consider establishing an overlay zone which will enable. And I can understand why the residents might be concerned about that. It sounds like a proactive step, which is changing the zoning. And I think it might have been Gail Burjaco at the meeting back in February who brought up comment number 13 and suggested the charrette process. And so what I'd like to do, with your permission, is delete strategy 1 on that page, talk about the importance of a charrette type process to investigate. I do think of all of the opportunity areas in sight, Newington Junction might be the most modest of all of them. So the map, which is currently on page 53 right now, shows similarly sized circles for Newington Center, Cedar Street, the TVDD area, and for Newington Junction. And it would seem to me, I really think Newington Junction is smaller, and so we should make those circles smaller. And also modify the text on page 51 to talk about the importance of a neighborhood-driven process, a charrette-type process, to investigate what, if any, opportunities there might be. So rather than leave an impression that we've pre-jumped to a conclusion, to leave the door open over the next decade to investigate what opportunities may exist there. So I think that would be my recommendation for your consideration.
I think that sounds pretty good. Do the other commissioners have any comments concerning what Glenn just spoke about?
Commissioner Sobieski, I have no issues with that.
Everybody else is okay with it? I think it sounds good. I'm gonna ask this resident who has her hand up if she'd like to speak and ask a question. I'll let her ask a question now. If somebody could unmute her.
Yes, thank you. I actually, and everybody talking, they answered the question that I had, so I appreciate it.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Glenn, I think that if there's no objection from the commissioners, I think that's a good way. And if you want to proceed, I'd appreciate it.
I will take care of that, Mr. Chairman. I think for the commissions, two things just inform the commission. I think if the commission is comfortable this evening, the next major step for us would be to schedule a public hearing at some point in time down the road. There's two ways that we can do that. I can make these changes and we go to public hearing with it, or I can make these changes and the commission gets a chance to look at it one more time. So we'll talk about that at the end of the meeting, but I didn't want you to think tonight that you were actually making a change to the plan. You're making we're exchanging ideas for further discussion at the public hearing process. The other thing, Mr. Chairman, comment number 15 here, which came up at the meeting, was that people wanted to clarify that a proposal for one TOD zone doesn't apply to all TOD areas. And I think I'd like to incorporate that comment throughout this chapter, basically on every opportunity site, to say these are all unique and they all need their own solution rather than one size fits all. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, I think that's pretty obvious with the discussions that have taken place. I agree. I don't think there's any objection from the commissioners.
Ready to move on to chapter 9, which is economic development. I think everybody at the public meeting talked about the need and recognized the need for economic development in Newington. The plan promotes concepts related to economic development. I think we had a discussion towards the end of the meeting about comment 17, which is that perhaps Newington should aspire for a 3 to 5% grand list growth in town to try to keep taxes neutral, or higher than that even, so that taxes can go down. And my thought process here for comment number 17 would be that I wouldn't suggest the commission adopt an action step to do that, because that's almost too hard, particularly with, as Commissioner Braverman pointed out, some of the changes that may be happening in the economy overall. But I think having a specific numeric goal, that our goal as part of the POCD is to encourage economic development to achieve a 3 to 5% grand list growth rate, could be an important statement. How does the commission feel about that?
Glenn, Commissioner Sobieski, what's the average going up every year? I mean, in other towns that you've worked in, is it 3 to 5, or is it more or less?
Every community is different. The ebb and flow of the economy, locational determinants that change the way that things move. Some of the, as Commissioner Payne had pointed out, some of the larger industrial complexes have gone through ebb and flows, and that's affected the grand list. So I don't have an answer, Commissioner, in terms of if there's an average or anything else. I think most communities in Connecticut aspire for more economic development for tax and other reasons. Go ahead.
I think that it's not a bad idea, but it's a little unrealistic to think that we have to go up that much just to cover our taxes. I think that the statement should also say that we should find efficiencies within our budget and try to improve efficiencies across the board, along with grand list development, okay, which in order to keep the taxes at a reasonable rate. Otherwise, we're going to become unaffordable for the town of Newington. It will be unaffordable for residents.
Yeah, so I think I can figure out a way, Mr. Chairman, to make a statement like that. I think you're advocating for not having a specific number goal. And I think those numbers can present some challenges. So I think if we promote economic development and also efficiencies in, municipal government to enhance our fiscal picture, would be a good way to go in the POCD.
It's almost like basically the town has to live within its budget, because we're 95% grown, developed, and we have to deal with redevelopment and possible some new development, and there's just not enough of that. So I think, you know, a real recognition of the fact that we have to live within our means.
Got it.
Any other commissioner have any questions?
Question is this, are we taking into consideration moving forward on what's happening with the COVID-19 and the potential revenues and taxes and people working, people being laid off? What are the town's, you know, plans to help people that have been laid off, that have been, you know, out of work, and, you know, in terms of their paying taxes, they may be impacted.
I think we can get into that conversation a little bit more when we talk about the businesses and that we're going to be helping under later in our agenda. We're going to be talking about what is it? Outdoor restaurant seating and whatever else we can do for some of the small businesses, the retails and things. I don't know if any of that really belongs in a POCD. Let's all hope that this virus is over after a year. But
if I may, Mr. Chairman, I'm just thinking here that I think Commissioner Braverman brings up an interesting point, though. There's things that happen and changes that occur over time that make us realize that a document suddenly seems dated. And if the POCD is going to continue to seem relevant over the next decade, I'm thinking on page 56, it might make sense to put a sidebar in. And the sidebar would simply say something like, at the time this plan was being prepared, the country was experiencing this situation. Newington has been a leader in addressing issues related to economic development and will strive to address the implications of this going forward. So we don't have specifics yet because we don't really know. I mean, there's conjecture about high unemployment rates that may or may not, we just don't know yet. But I think at least acknowledging that we're going to try to remain flexible should this continue or change in some way, I think would be a important statement in the plan.
Excellent point, Glenn. I like that. How does that work for Commissioner Braverman and the other commissioners?
I'm just concerned about what's going on with, you know, the progress that's being, you know, proposed. And I'm not sure, I don't have a high confidence level. I mean, every day my wife and I walk toward the Berlin Turnpike, and where Pier 1 used to be, as they're closed, and the store that was next to it, the Curtain Place, whatever it was called, that's closed, it's empty. The air conditioners have been torn apart and the guts have been removed. And you walk down, the only thing that's really viable is the Honey Ham Place. And, you know, the rest of that whole parking lot is empty.
Yes.
Mr. Oh,
or go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you know, Glenn, I think the days of the brick and mortar stores may be coming to an end. Some of the smaller ones, like Ann and Hope and Pier 1. I think what we need, you might want to find a way, I don't know, I'm just going to throw this out there, that we need to take and instead of the huge box stores, try to make smaller ones. Like, for lack of a better word, not a strip mall. I don't like to use that word, but something along that line there that we should look to try to redevelop. I mean, as I said earlier, the days of big factories and big businesses are coming to an end. You're going to find a few of them here and there, but I think we need to reinvent ourselves a little bit up there on a turnpike. And I think what we need to do is to get the economic development person on board with that and explain what we'd like to get done. Just my opinion. But I mean, I think you're right. It's not going to go back the way it was. COVID-19 viruses.
But we don't know that for sure, but I agree with you. I agree with Glenn adding something on as 56 there.
And I think this in terms of Commissioner Braver and Commissioner Sobieski, back on page 52, which is in Chapter 8, is a discussion about the fact that the Berlin Turnpike is in fact an opportunity area. And it gently discusses this fact that the world is changing, the world of retail is changing, that we think the area will be ripe for redevelopment due to market considerations. We pledge in here that Newington will prepare or should prepare for and address these situations to promote appropriate redevelopment. So what is that going to be? I'm not sure yet. It could be smaller stores, it could be mixed uses or housing, it could be a lot of different things. But my hope would be the potential applicants in the future will see this text and say to the commission, we're here to try to make, a vision for the Berlin Turnpike come together. And I think in the recommendations in this chapter, the Berlin Turnpike area is an area where, we could spend some additional time thinking and visioning as to what those types of things could be. So it's in here, it's just not in the economic development chapter. So I think what I'd like to do is part of the economic development chapter, refer people back to page 52 so that they know that we've recognized that.
Sounds good, Glenn. Any other commissioners' questions, or I'd like to have Glenn proceed with the rest of this, move forward. Go ahead, Glenn.
Page 3 is chapter 10, residential development. And the question came up at the public meeting back in February, where are the opportunity sites for affordable housing? I think the POCD, the chapter 8 on opportunity sites identifies areas where transit and utilities could accommodate additional housing and a walkable village type configuration. I think also, Craig, have you discussed with the commission the affordable housing plan considerations?
No, I haven't, but I can talk about that later tonight under the town planner's report.
Okay. So I think that Newington is made up of a number of stable neighborhoods in all different parts of the community. So the question in a sense is which areas are potentially have infrastructure, utilities, or other things which might support additional housing. I think as Commissioner Sobieski has pointed out, the road network is one, the transit network's another, utility availability is another. So these are areas for consideration for housing options in the future. It doesn't necessarily mean affordable housing, but housing that to meet the housing needs of the community. So they were identified based on, again, transit, utilities, the roadway network. So I'm not sure that any change is necessary in the POCD, but the comment was made and I wanted to put this before the commission for discussion.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
I do have one quick question, Glenn. I know you don't have the answer, you might not have the answer, but do you think with the way this virus is spreading because of the closeness of the buildings and stuff, that this may play into future development?
I think it could. There was actually a discussion on the planners listserv this week about the possible longer term implications of some of the things that are going on right now. And some of them are almost fantastical in the possibility they might happen, and others seem like they're perhaps more probable. So I think we're going to learn a lot over the next 6 months to a year if this virus persists, if there's no vaccine or anything else which is available for it. We were talking about having a conversation with one of our colleagues about whether or not multifamily developments will no longer have elevators in central hallways, but they'll be oriented outside. So you have your own entry. You don't share the corridors with other people. But people are going to need housing, and they're going to need different types of housing as different stages in their life. So I think Newington continuing to have that type of opportunity is important. Exactly how it'll play out, I wish I did know, Stan. I'd make a lot of, like Back to the Future. I'd figure out how to invest in the stock market on that one.
No, I was just wondering because I know the outbreaks in New York were especially tied into high density areas like apartments and condos and stuff.
I also think the virus showed up there first.
Right.
Yeah.
It's an international portal, and so
Right.
So there's a lot of.
No, I was just wondering. That's all. All right. Thank you.
The virus spread right up the Connecticut mass transit corridor. So
yes.
Good thing for that transit area. Why don't we proceed, Glenn, get through the next section, please.
Yep. The comment came up, number 21. The plan suggests the consideration of an inclusionary housing policy in the future. And comment was made that Newington already has a diverse housing stock. Maybe we don't need that. An inclusionary housing policy is a policy where the commission is any part of any sort of market rate development could require that some consideration be made for alternatives, whether it be housing which is affordable or housing meeting different housing needs, et cetera. And statutes allow for this. So the plan, the verb that it chooses on the plan on page 66, item B1, says consider adopting an inclusionary zoning requirement. And again, this comment was made. Does the commission wish to keep that language or modify it?
Any comments from commissioners?
If none, Mr. Chairman, that completes page 3. We're on to page 4 now.
Okay.
There are a number of comments at the public meeting having to do with pedestrian, bicycle, and transit. Newington resident is actually on the board, statewide board, related to this. So we got some great input and feedback. I think the plan contains many recommendations that are supportive of pedestrian, bicycle, and transit. I think comment number 28, a comment was made that it might make sense to support integration of pedestrian, bicycle, and transit. I think that comment was raised because the maps, which are currently on page 79, 80, and 81, are separate maps. One is pedestrian, one is bicycle, one is transit, and led to the conclusion that we're treating them separately. And the issue is we weren't. It was just trying to make a map that had all of those on there, got really, really busy. So we kind of split it up. So I think putting a statement in here that we need to think about other modes of transportation and coordinating them, I think would make sense. So that change is recommended on number 28.
I don't have a problem with that. Any other commissioners have a problem?
No,
Okay.
Dominic, maybe if Gail's still on, her and I served on a committee years ago of trying to get a bicycle pass through Newington. I know I had sent that into the DOT, and I think I sent a copy into Craig too, where we had laid out a bike path that you could actually go traverse most of the town without getting on the major highways.
Do you know where that is?
I don't know if Craig has got it, or I may still have it. Gail may have a copy of it. If I find it, I'll forward it to Dominic or Craig, and he can forward it to you.
If you would, Stanley, because I think that one of the comments that was made is that the bicycle map, which is on page 80 of the POCD, took advantage of the fact that the state had categorized the state highways or the state numbered routes for bicycle suitability. And the comment was made that, Maple Hill and Church, for example, were streets that are local streets, but they actually could be suitable for bicycle use. So if the town has other routes which might interconnect different parts of town, I'd love to include those in the POCD. So
I think one of the ones that comes to mind, Glenn, I don't want to hold the meeting up, but one of the ones that comes to mind was going down Garfield, down Walsh, down to Robbins. All right, that would get you out of the center of town and out down into Robbins Avenue area, and stay off the busy main thoroughfares there. When we got on to Robbins, then you could probably, I think the suggestion was try to reduce one of the lanes up there, if I'm not mistaken. You could also take that and go down Garfield across Mazzacoli Way, use the crosswalk, and actually go into the bicycle path down here now to Elton Drive and around that way and get almost all the way over to West Hartford without traversing any of the major roads. They're all back roads. And there was a couple of towns, I'm sorry?
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Oh, there was a couple of towns that had put up like little cardinal signs that say bike path, bike lanes this way here.
Yep.
It's only a thought. I mean, I'd like to see the town become more bike friendly myself, but.
I think
Thank you,
Sorry,
Commissioner. We have a question from Gail would like to comment. So if we could unmute Gail so that maybe she can add some information for us.
She's all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is Gail Draco. Just to, yes, Stanley and I did talk about this, for a while, a couple years ago. But just to let you know, I think Parks and Recreation, and this was before Bill DeMayo, did have actually some trails laid out. So you might want to, historically, maybe they have it in their files. And also we had talked about, I actually have them, Newington, the old Newington Bicycle Shop, and perhaps the new Trek might have it too. They actually had trails, or routes that, 5 mile, 10 mile, whatever, that they had laid out. So you might want to check with them to see whether they have those routes available, and that could possibly be incorporated into your maps.
Thank you very much, Gail. Any other comments from the commissioners? Okay, Glenn, why don't you proceed?
Mr. Chairman, comment number 30, the plan suggests that there's all sorts of evidence of a parking shortage at the Cedar Street Fast Track Station, that perhaps the town might want to coordinate with DOT to alleviate that. The observation was made that the transit stop is an extremely valuable amenity to the town, and the last thing we want to do is provide more parking for out-of-town users. So that's a policy change, and I appreciate some feedback from the commission as to should we take that comment in the PUCD out, leave it in. It's the commission's pleasure.
What number was that again, Glenn?
Comment number 30, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, feels strange. Well, yeah, I think for it to be successful, it has to provide enough parking there. Commissioners' comments? If an opportunity comes on that site, the Newington Junction site, and the timing is right, and we can provide extra parking there for, it's not necessarily for out-of-towners, it could be for in-town people.
And the verb is investigate, Mr. Chairman. So it doesn't say we're going to do this. It says investigate opportunities to provide more parking as part of new development separately to support the use of the fast track busway. So I think investigate is kind of a softer verb.
Absolutely. I don't have a problem with that. Is that all right with all the other commissioners? Okay, Glenn, you want to proceed?
I'm sorry, I missed my unmute button. I just wanted to add a comment that the use of cars and trucks and everything else, there's a shifting change taking place. And I think we should examine what's happening with transportation a little bit more closely. I'm not trying to be paranoid about it, but given the coronavirus and everybody else's, and I haven't even filled my car in 2 months, so I haven't even traveled that far. And if you're looking at the way people commute, I think there's a great impact, and I'm not sure how it's going to roll out in the future.
Yeah, we're in uncharted waters right now. Glenn, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Mr. Chairman, I think Commissioner Braverman brings up an interesting idea. I'd like to find a place with the commission's consent to put a sidebar in the chapter on transportation, vehicular transportation, to point out these types of things, that there may be changes, and then we're going to try as a community to stay on top of those.
I like that. Is that all right with you, Commissioner Braverman?
Yes, sure.
Okay, very
Mr.
good.
Chairman, I really don't have any other comments. There are some comments under the implementation chapter, but they were really about the people encouraging and promoting implementation, which is what the plan recommends. So I don't think there's any change that's necessary.
All right, could we have James go back to that inclusionary zoning requirement? I don't think we as a commission gave you an answer on that. So if we could put that back on the board, and if we could get some input from the commissioners to give to Glenn so that he can finalize this. And Glenn, if you could explain it to the commissioners one more time.
Yep. On
Is that 82?
No, that is on
66?
page 66 of the POCD.
66, comment 21.
It's action step B1. And what it says is consider adopting an inclusionary zoning requirement to require an affordable housing component of every new housing development, especially in housing opportunity areas identified in the POCD. So the statutes allow the commission to adopt a regulation that applies across the board to new development as opposed to on a case-by-case basis.
To ask for that they have to provide a percentage of affordable housing.
So for example, if
But if we
Newington,
didn't have this in, we could still, on a case-by-case basis, ask for the same thing.
it gets a little bit harder, I think, because the commission can be accused of being playing favorites, including for some, for not for others. And so I think the communities that have done this, Newington, I just checked in the plan, its affordable housing percentage right now is 8.58%. So if a new development gets built that doesn't have affordable housing, Newington falls behind. Its 8.58% number starts to go down. If, on the other hand, we require that each new housing development, let's say, put in 8.58% affordable housing, we would stay level over time. Or if we said 10%, it could be higher. So we're not going to pick the specific outcome, but what the strategy here says, consider adopting an inclusionary zoning requirement. And this could be an effective tool to consider in the future.
Okay, Craig Minor has a question or a comment. Go ahead, Craig.
Yes, inclusionary zoning could refer to other than just additional affordable housing. For example, you could have a regulation that requires a multifamily proposal to include a certain number of 3-bedroom apartments to create more family housing, or even senior housing, although that's probably not an issue today. But inclusionary zoning can be more than just affordable housing.
Yes, it is. I think 8.2, the statutory section 8.2I, I think it does refer specifically to affordable, but I agree with you, Craig, that it could be other things as well.
Yeah, and affordability, our town is aging, so there could be over 55 or some other type of housing. I have no problem with it because it says basically that we're going to consider it and to look into it in the future. Any other comments from the commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, the last issue I have for you tonight is the next steps here. I think there's 2 options available to the commission. Number one is we could schedule a public hearing for July 15th or later. The reason would be that timing, as the state statutes require a 65-day notice period so that we can notify the regional planning agency and also send it to the town council for their comment. The other option would be for me to make these changes, I guess either electronically PDF or print up copies for the commission to look at one more time and then schedule the public hearing. I think each time we print the plan, it costs us a couple $100. So my thought would be the public hearing is to get plots and feedback, and we can always change the plan based on that comment and feedback. So depending on what the commission sees as your summer schedule here, et cetera, we could schedule a public hearing for late July, August, September. It's the commission's preference.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation with the virus going on right now. We want to, if we don't have to plan it right away, I mean, we'd like to see, how things proceed, because we want to try to have a best turnout as possible for this public hearing. So I don't think we need to make the changes again and add any additional cost. I think we've all gone over everything. So I think it's a tentative meeting for in July or August for a public hearing is okay with me. And hopefully we'll be able to do it in person.
Greg, do you know what our OPM date is off the top of your head?
I would imagine all that's going to get extended too. They're not going to penalize us because of the virus for any dates, I would imagine.
Playing hardball a little bit, but the issue is I think our OPM date is June 9th of 2020. The executive order from the governor has given us a freebie 90 days. I don't believe all restrictions are going to be released by June 9th of 2020. So I think we get an automatic 90, which puts us into September. So I think, Mr. Chairman, if the commission was comfortable with heading for July, we could keep the hearing open if we wanted to get additional input, et cetera, still adopted by September and not have any sort of conflict with the state.
Okay, well, let's set something for the towards the end of July. And I'd like to keep this maybe on our agenda in case public has any questions between now and then. We could keep it on our agenda. What do you think about that, Craig? In case
Yes, we could do that.
we get any additional comments from the public.
Sure.
The only thing I might add, Mr. Chairman, if we could, is that if that happens, if there's additional comments that come in, if you could keep them separately. The statutes require the 65-day notice period for CROG and for the council. And if either one of them senses there's a separate document out there that doesn't reflect what they're reviewing, it creates some challenges. So as long as we keep track of those comments separately, those come in at the public hearing so that they follow the appropriate process, we'd be fine.
Okay, you have
I
that
will
down,
work-
Craig?
Yes, I understand.
I'll work
Okay.
with Craig to get the date worked out. I'll modify the plan. Enjoy the rest of your spring and summer, and I'll see you in July.
Let me just see if there's any other commissioners that have any questions for you, Glenn.
Sure.
Any commissioners have any questions? Glenn, thank you very much for all your hard work. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. See you guys soon.
Yep. Okay, that worked out well. We're going to go into old business. There's nothing. We have something for petitions for public scheduling. I'll have Craig explain that.
Yes, this is an application for a convenience store gas station on the corner of Main Street and Hartford Avenue. The plans, we have the plans, but because it does require a special permit, I'm recommending that the hearing for the special permit be scheduled for your next meeting. And we can review the plans at that meeting also.
Okay. Any comments or questions from the commissioners?
Quick question, Craig. When the plans, will they address any contamination left over from the old location?
What I could do is tell the applicant's consulting engineer to be prepared to address that comment when he comes to the hearing.
Yeah, because I believe Deep still has a deep well over there that they monitor periodically.
Okay.
I'm not sure. They were doing it up to a couple of years ago. I don't know if they still are or not.
Is that the old Gulf station?
No, it's the old, yeah, it was Gulf, it was Amoco, it was Citgo. It was Ron's old gas station at the corner of Hartford Avenue in Maine.
Craig, now this was already a gas station, so, correct?
Yes.
Gas station, convenience?
Well, I don't
Or-
know if the previous
No.
gas station was a convenience store. It was torn down before I got here.
No, it wasn't. Just a
Convenience
regular
store.
gas station, Dominic.
So,
just
so
a
my
gas station.
question is, why does it have to go for a public hearing special permit if it was already an approved use?
Well, that's a good question. I would say that if for some reason TPZ ended up denying them their special permit, they might have a legal argument in the courts that the owner of the property never intended to abandon the gasoline use. I think that'd be an easy thing to prove.
So-
But the process, the public hearing process is a really good way to vet all of what might be unique issues at that location. That's your opportunity to require a condition of approval, such as they install sidewalks, which the regulations don't absolutely require. But the special permit process gives you the ability to require things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to require. And the public hearing is it's always in the public interest.
Okay, thank you. Technically, though, it doesn't need a special permit, but it's more like, it probably should have been a site plan, but we're getting public comment through the special permit process in order to protect the residents there the best we can, basically.
Yes,
But-
and there will
but
be
we-
site plan approval also on the agenda.
Okay. But we'd probably be hard fetched to deny anything over there because it was an existing facility, correct?
Agreed.
Okay. Okay, the next thing we're gonna do is we have a town planner's report, and it's going to talk about the staff approval of outdoor restaurant seating. So I instructed, as the commissioners know, I instructed the town planner to try to work with the restaurants and any other businesses. To date, we've got a few businesses that are in need of expanding their outside area. TJ's on Cedar, Ruth Chris's, and I believe Joey Garlick's is, and there might be a few additional ones. And the biggest concern, I believe, of all the commissioners, our planner, and all our staff, and before I go into that, I gotta tell you, the staff in Newington are outstanding. They've really come together. I commend the town planner and our highway department and everybody. The biggest problem is making sure that there is safety there, and I know that's everybody's concern. So these sites are getting inspected by I believe the building department, fire marshal, and other staff, and they've determined that some of these spots are going to need protection from vehicles, possibly going into the tent or into the sitting area, which is completely understandable. So the town has stepped up. I've talked to the highway department, and they're checking their inventory, and they're going to provide some blocking or jersey barriers, depending on how many they have. So they're going to start providing those for certain restaurants that, whether it's on town-owned land or even on private land. And if the town runs out of these blocks, then I've worked out where I will purchase blocks for whatever businesses that need them. And Mike Camello has donated his transportation so that he can pick them up from Tilcon. And the highway department has agreed to run the loader over there so that we can take them and put them in place. And so by protecting the residents in this manner, by protecting the customers in this manner, and then they also have to go through the health department and a few other things. We're not asking them to pay any fees. We're doing everything informally through the planner, and I've asked the planner to keep all the commissioners informed as we proceed with these things. And so I'll ask the planner to give us a report on anything that I might have missed.
No, I think you covered everything important, Mr. Chairman. I sent a memo to the commissioners this afternoon, which is displayed on your screen right now, which goes into a little more detail over the executive order that was issued by the governor the other day, giving a lot more detail to how we will process these requests for outdoor restaurant seating. Newington is kind of lucky that its regulations already allow outdoor seating. The only tweak that we had to accommodate was that the rules basically require the commission to approve them. Well, the governor has overruled that. The governor said staff will approve these, but you, the Newington Commission, you've already decided to do that. So we're actually a step ahead of the governor here. If you see the memo, as I say, under the governor's executive order, applications can be informal, and they need to be acted upon within 10 days, which should be plenty of time in most cases. If we don't act on them within 10 days, they're assumed to be approved, just like subdivisions. If we need additional information, we can request it, but we're certainly not going to ask for more information than we absolutely need. Really, all we need is a sketch to scale and just a paragraph or two explaining what they want to do. And I've talked to the health, Charles Brown of the health district, and he's asked me to keep them in the loop, which the executive order seemed to overlook, which I thought was a little odd, but Charles Brown has asked me to keep them informed, which I am doing. And of course, if there's a tent involved, then the fire marshal will be involved. Yes, the fire marshal will be involved also. And I've been talking to Guy about this from the beginning. So we're moving ahead very, very quickly. Now, since I last spoke to you, Commissioner Payne, I've gotten a request from TGI Friday, and gosh, just got another one. We've approved three.
DeBellas, did they call you?
No, DeBellas has not called me yet, but I'm expecting their call. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
well,
and Commissioner Payne, also, you'd asked me to put something on the website. I'm preparing something for the town website.
Okay. We I think the most difficult thing is communicating to these businesses that the town of Newington's trying to do anything possible they can to help them. You know, the tent they're getting, the chairs and tables they're providing, we're providing the inspections, but the protection, the bollards or the concrete blocks, that was an extremely difficult thing for these businesses to come up with. So I'm very pleased that the town staff and Mike Camello are helping with this. Is there any commissioners' comments or questions?
Commissioner
Now,
Payne.
there was
Oh.
one other thing I want to let you know, that the TJ's on Cedar asked to extend their hours. I don't have a problem with that. They want to extend their hours from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock at night. Is that correct, Craig?
Yes, and let me just mention, the executive order also specifically says that these uses cannot go past midnight. So this is consistent with that.
Okay. So on that item there for TJ's on Cedar, if any of the commissioners have any comments for the extending the hours for him from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock.
No, I think it's a good idea.
Hours.
Okay,
Good
so
idea.
no
Not a
objections?
problem.
Okay, so there's no objections on that. Is there any questions or comments on the whole restaurant situation?
Yes, Commissioner Payne, there's what they call plastic jersey out there, or K-rail, that it's lightweight, you can fill it with water and drain it. Might be a good idea to see if we can get any state funds to buy some of those. And they would be a lot easier to maintain than the concrete K-rail. Just a thought.
Yeah, those aren't cheap either. So we're trying to do everything on the cheap. We're
Okay.
using existing stock. We have some jersey barriers in stock that the town owns. And we also have some concrete blocks, I would assume. And they're going to use what stock they have, and then we'll pick up some additional stuff.
You might want to see if there's any jersey barrier left over at Brook Street and Rocky Hill.
Okay, well, we can have Craig check on that, and we're going to also check with Park and Rec to see if they have anything that they might have in inventory that we could use for the businesses. Any other? Let's see. We have two questions. We have Brian. Go right ahead, Brian, and then we'll go to Dave Lenars.
I was just going to say that anything that we can do, we should do to help out the town and the businesses. And that would be my only comment. Whatever we can logistically do, we should be able to do and take care of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the biggest thing is trying to communicate this to the restaurants and businesses too, and retail places. So if any of the commissioners run into businesses that need help, retail, restaurants, anything, send them over to the town planner, and he'd be happy to take care of them. And we also have a question from Commissioner Lenars. If you could go right ahead, Commissioner Lenars.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of things that, like what Brian just said, anything that we can do, we need to do for these businesses. But also you had mentioned, the task of having these businesses be aware that the town is trying to help them. But the businesses also have to be their own advocate, I think. They understand what's going on, unfortunately. So when they do call, I think the way that we're handling it in terms of having staff deal with it and address them through the chairman, and then having correspondence with us, I think is excellent. I'm fully confident in that. And I think that's the best way to do it. Also, just for clarification purposes, you talked about extending the hours for TJ's. Does that include all the businesses as well, not just TJ's? But I would love to see that if the restaurant wants to serve past 8 o'clock, obviously to accommodate their customers, that they all could do that.
Yeah, I believe that's open to anybody that requests it. A lot of the places, I think it depends on whatever hours they originally had. But I'm open to allowing them to go as late as 10 o'clock. I think the state said, what, midnight, Craig?
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, we can address this. I mean, we'll encourage them to stay open a little later. And hopefully very soon, some of these restaurants will be able to use some of their inside space, and they're still going to probably want their outside space until they become 100%. And then I would imagine that after this thing is over with, some of these businesses might want to keep and come back for a permanent situation for some outside dining possibly. And they're always welcome to come to the commission and do that.
Yeah, that was my other point. My other point was we had talked about it in the past where these businesses are going to come for some extension of hours or extension of their outside patio seating, which is wonderful. And I just think some verbiage has to be used at some point that unfortunately this is a temporary thing. And I can't stress the word temporary. You know, some of the commissioners had brought up that they don't want to see sometimes certain decisions made in terms of developments or parking because of what's going on. But I hope the word temporary is a huge word because of the fact that this will go away and we want to get back to normal. New norms will take place. And I think that's for efficiencies within the businesses themselves, not for our purview. But going forward, they need to know that this is temporary, and to accommodate them, and Newington setting the standard and doing such great things to accommodate the businesses. But at some point, if going forward, they want to increase it or keep it as permanent, then they need to come back to the commission and get permission to do so.
Very well said, Commissioner. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman?
Craig Minor
Fox?
has one minute, Commissioner Fox. Craig Minor is our town planner, would like to add something, I believe.
Yes, I want to address the issue that Commissioner Linares raised about how long these permits would be good for. The first one that we've issued so far for Ruth's Chris, as I was drafting it, I thought about that. And I started to give them 90 days, 3 months, which would be then, what's this, April, May, the middle of June. But then I thought, no, we're still definitely going to be in the throes of this in June. So then I bumped it up to November, to 6 months. Now, I don't know if anybody's going to be eating outdoors in November, so that may be more than enough. But the idea of having an end date very much was in my mind. I haven't issued another one since then. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll ask the commissioners. What do you think? What would you like the end date to be?
I think you covered it there. I mean, I think you're correct. I don't think anybody's going to go that far into the season with outside eating, but at least you have some flexibility. Commissioners, any questions?
Yeah, Commissioner Fox.
Yes, Commissioner.
Well, yeah, Commissioner Linares had said something about, I think it was you, David. You know, they should, that the business owners should act as their own advocates, and I think that, you know, that's a definite yes, because you know, with people still nervous with the outbreak and deaths still occurring, and a lot of hospitalizations, even though that's all coming down, you know, they might not feel safe even sitting outside. So I think between the business community, the Chamber of Commerce, and the town, and this commission, I think it behooves us to maybe do some community outreach in one way or another, and make sure that people feel safe, and that they know just because we're doing this, we're expediting these applications, doesn't mean we're being frivolous and just in just approving them right off the top of our head. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I think, go ahead, Commissioner
Payne, I had a conversation with you, and I told you, I think it's a great idea. We have to make sure our restaurants come back. We have to relax the rules a little bit until this pandemic is over. You're right. I don't think anybody's going to be eating in November out there, but you never know. But I am in favor of what Dave said, and I think that's what we need to do, is reach out to them if necessary. Let them know that we're here. Let them know that this is on a temporary basis until this clears up. And if they wish to make it permanent, then they have to come back. But I think we need to do whatever we need to do to get them moving.
Okay. Commissioner Lenars, you have a question?
Yeah, just to reiterate it again, and just in terms of, outreach and whatnot, just so the public knows that, I mean, there's no outreach in terms of favoritism. We're only expediting applications that have come forward from the businesses to the commission, to the planner. And I think having that done in that way, I think is the fairest way to do it. The planner has an excellent concept of having a temporary vision in place. Obviously, I think having outdoor seating in November could be a little risky, but that's on them. But anything that the businesses want, when the businesses come forward to the commission, to the planner, to the town, that we're there with open arms, helping them in any way we could. And if some businesses choose not to, that's their own purview as well. Let them make their own decisions. But if they choose to, we're there and we're staffed and competent in doing so and have a plan in place. And I think that's the most important thing going forward.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, I agree. They're not all going to open up at the same time. Everybody's got different circumstances. There's some employees that are making more money now being unemployed, and they might not go back to work. So there's some businesses that are experiencing that problem. So everybody, it's gonna be a slow process getting everybody back, but whatever we can do to help these businesses is a plus. So Craig, any business that comes in, any restaurant that is going to need protection to protect the customers with their tent or seating area, please let them know that either the town in one way or the other will provide that for them. And we'll continue, Craig and I will continue with what we're doing, and I will have the planner update all the commissioners as we proceed with this on each business so that you're well informed. Any other commissioners' comments or questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Yeah,
Commissioner Fox.
I think that bears mentioning again that, the staff, town planner and others should, actually, I don't know if you have or not, Craig, but actually should be reaching out to the business people, not vice versa. I mean, they're going to be calling to ask, oh, what are we going to do? What are you going to do? And I think you should maybe can actually preclude that by letting them know what we're going to do.
Yep. Well, go ahead, Commissioner Fox.
As far as keeping us notified, Mr. Chair, I would hope so. And I would hope that maybe if there's a little consternation and, should we do this or should we do that, a quick email to get some opinions, might be in the offing. Otherwise, just go ahead and keep doing what we're doing.
Very good. Yeah, one of the biggest concerns was getting the message out. So that's why, I've reached out to some of the businesses and I've asked Craig to send an email to Economic Development. If any of the commissioners know of a business owner in town or drives by a restaurant or happens to see another business that's in trouble, please have them reach out to the planner. The planner and the Newington staff, all the Newington staff are doing an unbelievable job keeping these businesses going and making it as efficient as possible. Craig had a question or a comment. Go ahead, Craig.
Yes, the chairman mentioned how we had reached out at the chairman's suggestion to the EDC. I've also reached out to the Chamber of Commerce, again, at the commissioner's chairman's suggestion, to let them know that we're available for any help that's needed.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Is there anything else on your planner's report, Craig?
Well, in my written report, I gave people an update on where we are with a couple of upcoming amendments that will be heard, but we don't need to discuss them unless anybody has any questions about them.
Okay. Have you heard anything about the development over where we returned the bond to them over on Deming, was it? Have you?
Oh, yeah, right. Deming. Yes. Okay. Yes, I know the one you
have an
mean.
update on that?
No. No. I did hear from one of the residents there the other day in connection with the Peckham Farm subdivision. But no, I haven't heard anything about, oh, no, that's not quite true. No, I got a call actually a few weeks ago from the original developer who was calling to ask, and he was a little bit vague, but I think what he was asking was, are we going to give him a hard time about obtaining building permits? And when I realized that that's what I think he was asking, I said, no, you're just like any other property owner. If you apply for your building permit, your taxes are current. No, planning and zoning we don't have any issue with your putting houses on those 3 parcels that you own.
Yeah, correct. So I understand that, and it's basically now the responsibility of the association to finish the specifications on the road, come back to us about the sidewalk, and finish any wetlands or any other drainage or any other grading over there, because they have received all the funds. So maybe we could get an update from them, how they're proceeding with that for our next meeting. Any comments on our meeting on how this proceeded? It seems to be a tremendously better than the situation that we had previously. I want to thank the IT and James. Like I said, all the town staff. I commend you for the job that you've been doing.
Commissioner Payne, I have a question. Actually, it's for Craig Minor. Are these upcoming subdivision and zoning amendments, are they going to be published so we're going to see what they are?
I believe absolutely that
have
you will
seen
see
them.
them.
They were sent
Okay.
previously, but I will certainly send, well.
I can
send
hardly
another
hear you,
copy out
Craig.
Tomorrow, and they'll be, of course, in your agenda packet, and they're on the town website. But I'll send another copy to everybody tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Gill,
Yes, yes,
can you
Tom.
hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I just wanted to go back to the restaurants with Craig. Possibly if we could just have, a one-page email as to who has, requested. Because I know that Rooster Company it has sent paperwork in. So I want to just make sure that as we talk to these people, we can, we know, at least know that it's in the system.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct, Tom. Roosters is one of them that we are talking with. I forgot to mention it. They would like to take about 10 parking spaces that are in the rear of their business. It's owned by the town. The town manager has given permission. And that is where we're going to put some Jersey barriers to protect the people. And I believe Rooster's going to put a tent up and then tables inside there, and then still have their to-go area too. I think it's important for the restaurants to continue with their delivery services, their takeout, their curbside, and then by adding this outside seating area, it gives them a shot, to bring in some extra income. I hope that answers your question, Tom. And yes, Craig, the town planner will keep all the commissioners updated on every restaurant that comes in, and he'll give you the details on it. And then if you have any concerns or questions, all you have to do is get back to us.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the commissioners? Is there any communications, Craig?
No.
Okay. We'll go to public participation. If there's anybody still out there from the public that would like to make a comment. Remarks from any commissioners?
Yes, Commissioner Payne, I just got an update just before I got on the meeting from CROG. I will send that out tomorrow morning to everybody.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Sobieski. Any other questions from commissioners? I want to.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Yeah, I kind of going back to earlier when we were going over the POCD, I would think, the whole virus thing has totally turned our world upside down and inside out. And, I don't, not to get too medical about it, but I don't think anything is changing in the foreseeable future, days or weeks, but months from now, you never know what's going to happen. This thing could just go away. There could be a vaccine. So I think we should be proactive and be planning, but I'm not, I would be wary of being too concerned, years down the road about, making TPZ decisions based upon this virus currently. That's all.
Yeah, I agree with you, Commissioner. Excellent points.
Yep.
Excellent points. I appreciate your comments. Any other comments from anybody else? Well, I want to thank everybody. I think this worked out well. Is there a time in the future, in the near future, Craig, that we'll be able to have live meetings? At what time, will we be able to space ourselves in, or will this continue for now? What's your opinion?
Oh, I don't have any insight into this pandemic more than anyone else. I'm assuming it's going to be like this for at least a couple more months. That's kind of what I'm personally assuming.
Okay. All right. I think this meeting worked out a lot better for the commissioners. I would hope. I think that the hearing it and being able to see people made the commissioners more comfortable, and we'll continue with this process. And I want to thank James, and also our IT people. I think Paul and our town manager and all our staff, and you, Craig. You guys are doing an excellent job. And everybody, please stay safe and follow the procedures so that you are safe and everybody else is safe. And if you see a business out there in Newington that might need help or has requested something, please send them to Craig, and we'll do whatever we can to help the businesses. If there's nothing else, or if there's no other comments, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I want to thank everybody very much. Good night, everybody.
Stay well and healthy.
Good night.